They did it. They actually did it. The best episode yet. How you going? Welcome to my The Expanse Season 1 Episode 8 Salvage review. So Episode 8 begins with Miller on the ferry to Eros, and he's sitting with a man who reveals himself to be a Mormon that's about to join the Nauvoo. So Miller asks him, what happens when you get there and there turns out to be an inhospitable planet? And the guy says, well, that's just God's plan for us. Miller knows all about that. So the Rosinante is investigating this asteroid, and they find that there's a ship hidden in a crevasse. They work out that this ship is a stealth ship because it's not giving off any EMF. And it looks like this ship has been abandoned and vented. Meanwhile, on Tycho, Johnson is having someone investigate the chip that he found on Lopez's body. It looks like it's some sort of a data vault. And it turns out that the Nauvoo is like in the shape of an angel blowing a trumpet. Is that like that they're the messengers of God? And it looks like it's made out of gold. So Holden goes and gets the spy, whose name is Kenzo, and he interrupts him trying to transmit some data. So Holden tells the squad to suit up because they're going in. So inside this abandoned stealth ship, it looks like there's been some sort of struggle because there's blood smeared on the walls. And there's a locker which looks like it's been opened from the inside by force. The lock's all mangled. And then Holden stumbles upon a suit that's floating in midair. Is it midair if there's no air? Anyway, there's a suit floating in midair and it turns around and it's got the markings of the ship, the Scopuli. So it looks like this stealth ship is probably the one that blew up the Canterbury. And Amos finds that the ship is still functional. So he asks Nagata if they should turn on the reactor so they can have some light while they're trying to crack this safe that's in a wall. So they turn on the reactor and Nagata realizes that the door to the reactor room has been torn open. So at UN headquarters on Earth, they're having a meeting about how they're sending a ship to intercept Holden. And this ship has been detected by Tycho. But the UN believes that because Tycho station is owned by Earth, there won't be a problem. But then again, the Belters might not agree with that. So the UN's plan is to have Holden killed and make it look like he was caught up in some sort of a riot or civil unrest. Which got me wondering, do people even know that Holden's alive? Wouldn't people think that he blew up on the Donnager? And they also show us that Franck de Graaf killed himself. Or did he? So this is probably the only real mistake in this episode, and Burton's trying to extract a safe from the wall and he's using a blowtorch, and he decides that he'd be better served if he had the spy do the cutting while he watched. So he hands the torch to the spy and then grabs his rifle from midair, like it's just floating there. And I'm like, is that a good idea to have your rifle floating in midair with the spy standing directly behind you? And then we see that there's some sort of a blue crystal thing that's pulsing with energy. It looks like it's feeding off the energy given off by the reactor. So Nagata hypothesizes that this might be some sort of a residue given off by the stealth tech that they don't know about. She thinks it might be nanofluids that have been frozen due to the ship being vented. So while the spy's cutting this safe out of the wall, Amos checks the logs and he sees that the ship was called the Anubis. Or Anubis. And that's the ship that Miller was investigating. So the spy says that Anubis was the god of the dead in Egypt. So Amos discovers that the ship was on its way from Phoebe to Eros. And Lopez said that when they investigated Phoebe, everyone was dead from some kind of a chemical spill. So it makes me wonder, was the Donnager infected with this same stuff? And was it destroyed to stop the stuff from being spread? But if that's the case, then why would they board the ship? But it's alive! So Nagata realizes then that they have to shut the reactor off to starve this stuff of energy. And then they get off that ship and back onto the Rosinante, and they have to do a full decontamination because they might have been infected with this stuff. But I'm wondering, does the decontamination work against like crystals? And then Nagata says that they basically have to store all the stuff they took off the ship into the cargo hold in case they have to get rid of it in a hurry. And then Kenzo says that they were obviously going to go to Eros because that's where this ship was heading. So he says that he's hacked some systems on Eros and he might be able to help them locate Polanski. So they take off and nuke the ship from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. Kablamo! So I'm wondering if blowing up that ship just basically atomizes that goo throughout the entire solar system. That'd suck. So Miller arrives on Eros and he heads to the docks to see if he can find Julie or this pod from the Anubis. But the dockmaster's too busy playing the pokies to bother helping him, so Miller offers to give him a few free spins. And then he whoops him. But unfortunately help arrives and he's carted off to jail. So it turns out that that Sammy guy that tipped Miller off about the Anubis shuttle being docked is an ex-cop who's now working for security on Eros. So he gets Miller out and he tells him he needs to be more careful in future. And then he reluctantly shows Miller some security footage of Julie Mao heading into the Blue Falcon Hotel. But it turns out that Julie was using the alias Polanski, so Polanski is Julie. So on the Tycho, they've cracked the code of the data vault and they're looking at the ship images and the drive signatures of the ships that attacked the Donnager. Plus one last bombshell that Fred Johnson won't believe. It's enough to make him poo his pants. So Kenzo, the spy, guides the crew from the Rosinante to the Blue Falcon. But he was also calling in a tactical squad and making sure that the police weren't alerted. So while they're waiting for the clerk at the hotel to help them, the lobby starts filling up with creepy weirdos. And then Kenzo makes a run for it, so Burton pulls out his gun and starts firing, and then there's a massive shootout. So the crew of the Rosinante are being pinned down behind furniture, and they're about to have a grenade thrown at them by these thugs, until bang! Miller comes in and whacks the grenade out of the guy's hand with his police baton. So they decide to team up and head into Julie/Polanski's room. And it stinks. The lights are all out and they're like, someone here put up a hell of a fight. But then Nagata realizes that they weren't actually in a fight, they were just trying to destroy all the energy emitting devices in the room. Because it turns out that Julie's in the shower and she's dead. And she's been overtaken by the blue crystals. She got infected, so are the rest of the crew going to be infected too? This was a really, really good episode. It seriously felt like this episode was about 20 minutes long instead of the 45 or so minutes that it normally is. I think what I liked best about this episode was the fact that it was probably like 6 different scenes instead of 60 like the previous ones. The scenes were allowed to breathe, they were allowed to think about things, they were allowed to talk about things. You really get a sense of the characters' motivations, like why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? What are they hoping to achieve here? Why aren't they doing something else? Etc. The next episode's going to be like an hour and a half long double episode, I think, so I'm looking forward to that one. And that wraps up my review of episode 8 of The Expanse. I'd totally recommend anyone watch this episode. I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. It's a perfect episode. So I'll see you next week for the big thrilling conclusion. Don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe.